The Ministry of Information and Broadcasting has circulated a new draft version of the Broadcasting Services Regulation Bill 2024 among select industry stakeholders. This draft, which follows the initial version released in November 2023, aims to bring online streaming services, social media accounts, and online video creators under the regulatory purview of the MIB. The updated bill redefines the term broadcaster to include digital news broadcasters, including anyone who systematically broadcasts news and current affairs online, including on social media platforms via text, video, or audio. This broad definition even covers TikTok creators, though it is banned in India. Under the proposed regulations, YouTubers and Instagrammers with a certain threshold of followers will be required to inform the Indian government of their existence within a month of the bill's enactment and register with the three-tier regulatory structure previously applied to streaming services like Amazon Prime Video and Netflix. The draft bill shall also impact ad networks. Moreover, the current draft does not restrict the application of the law to broadcasters who are citizens of India but can also include global content creators, news publishers, or commentators. Interestingly, stakeholders were instructed to collect their individual copies of the second draft and provide an undertaking not to share the draft further. Each copy is uniquely watermarked with a number that identifies the stakeholder, allowing the MIB to trace any leaks. This has led to a lot of controversy. In today's episode, we are joined by Anusha Ravi Sood, a journalist and executive editor of South First, to discuss the implications of this bill. How is it going to affect content creators and digital media? Is it going to curb the freedom of digital media? Let us talk to her to know more about it. Thank you so much for joining us. And firstly, I want to ask you, what is your opinion about the draft broadcasting services bill, especially the new version that we have now seen online?
Thank you so much, Akshita, for having me on this show. I also would like to have a more informed opinion before jumping to conclusions, but that would require the union government to show us the latest version of the bill as it is being reported. As of now, whatever information we have is all from leaked versions of what particularly proposed amendments in this draft bill are. And I would appreciate if the government did come out and make it public. I would appreciate if the government showed Indian public, Indian citizens who are stakeholders at the end of it, what kind of changes, what kind of supposed amendments they've made in this draft bill. We are a country that likes to debate, that likes to be uh, involved. We like to be involved in the process of legislation, and I do think the government should probably place this in the public domain so all of us can make informed decisions. Right now, what is happening is there is so much secrecy around this draft. Naturally, the human mind is curious to find out what is the need for such secrecy, and because you're not transparent about the changes that you have made, you're compelled to think that something bad is going to come after this. I think to put all of these things to rest, the government should just place these changes in public domain, allow people hold wider consultations instead of with certain stakeholders who are not even allowed to share the copy of these changes with others. I think a lot of the problem with the lot of discussion around this bill is about the kind of secrecy that is being maintained around it. And I do not think in a country like ours, in a democracy like ours, there is a need for such secrecy in a bill that could probably impact the largest section of the society because all of us are digital
Users, yeah,
content
consumers.
consumers.
Yeah. So, before we even step into the secrecy, I want to know, a lot of reports mention that this bill is leading towards digital dictatorship, primarily because of the new regulations that it tries to, put in, the confirming to the program code and the evaluation of the content even before it's published, having a grievance redressal mechanism, those things which are, and also giving the name of digital broadcasters. I would also want to know, what do you think about these things? What does that mean, especially for digital media spaces, which is something that everybody's consuming these days?
See, why somebody feels that this bill is going to be bring in digital dictatorship is because of the past experiences we've had. quite honestly. And I do not think anybody should look at this bill as a standalone component. There is a flow to these things. First, there is absolute control of mainstream media, which compels people who do not want to watch what is being shown on mainstream media. I will speak just about news channels since I'm a journalist. Let me stick to my field. When people do not trust what is there on social media anymore, they branch out, they look for information other than mainstream media, which is your digital media, new media, there is independent media. There are YouTubers who are dealing exclusively with news content, like Ravish, who split from
Yeah.
mainstream media to start his own thing. So once you lose control, so controlling media means what? Controlling narrative. So when there is a split in that, and you have alternative mechanisms in place to ensure that what you see on mainstream media is not the only information that is being broadcast to public, then you would like to look at ways to control that medium as well. So I do not think this bill should be seen in independently. Look at the process of things. First, there is control of mainstream media. Then there is an alternate media that pops up. Then you start wondering, how can I probably have let me not use the word control. How can I have an influence over this alternate media? Now, you begin with setting up the government's own fact check unit. PIB now has its own fact check unit. Primarily, what is the job of a journalist? The government wants to do it for itself. And we have seen that the PIB has again and again repeatedly lied to the people of this country in the names of fact check when it has deemed a particular reported news report to be fake, while the reality insists that the news report was correct. Now, the government itself, through its fact check wing, has messed up when it comes to keeping up a standard, keeping it independent, autonomous as it should be. Then comes the next component. Now, where are these digital content being broadcast? On social medias. So the government brings in a bill that compels intermediaries to shut down tweets, to shut down content the moment government thinks, okay, this is problematic, with no scope for appellate authority. There, you can't appeal against this particular decision. Then comes the component where the government engages with content creators,
Yeah.
independent content creators, and we see the government associating with content creators. You have sponsored content where content creators are pumping up ministers,
Yeah.
policies, whatever. So all of these things put together, and add to all of these things the new, fresh, replaced criminal justice laws that are so vague, that gives so much space for anybody to be put in jail for anything, and for much longer police custodies than the previous IPCs. All of this put together, and the new regulations to the broadcast bill, now that becomes problematic. This is not a standalone bill that is problematic. It's a series of things, and I think that's where the devil lies. Most people say devil lies in the details. Here, the devil lies in the process. It is consistently several decisions that have been taken in the run up to the debate around this bill is what is problematic. Is it going to be dictatorial in nature? Honestly, I don't know, because I haven't seen the draft bill,
We're
and I would
almost
very
very
much like
confident.
to know. I would also very much like to know if it's dictatorial in nature, and that's why I insist that the government should put it in public
Public.
domain.
Also, like as a journalist, usually the process of the bill before it's passed is that it's always there in the public domain and we can read through it. Citizens can at least give an opinion about what they feel. But this something that's going to affect everybody because right now everybody tends to create content and this applies to everyone and such an important bill is not there in the public domain. Over the years, as your experience, have you seen this happen ever before, or what do you even just have to say about the secrecy of this? Because it's something that we don't see normally until, of course, the bill is something that's supposed to be classified. It's important, but this seems that it's going to affect everybody. So,
See, in the no government likes huge participation by people. I'll be very honest. It doesn't matter which party is in power. If there is a trend that allows, if there is a chance for the government to bulldoze a legislation without having to hold consultations, the government will do it. What is peculiarly different about this particular government is, I'll just tell you the process. Now, there is a draft bill. The draft bill is put up in public domain, especially a bill that impacts large groups of people. And it's not about one industry or one thing. a bill that affects the largest group of citizens. It's put up in public domain. Objections, suggestions are sought. So you can write into the ministry. You can say, okay, this particular point, point B under subsection A, it doesn't work for us for these reasons. You had the opportunity to file objections and also explain why you have these objections toward that bill. um, and then there is a second set or second stage of filtration where this bill is probably tabled in the parliament. The parliament will decide whether the bill can be passed with just a debate in the parliament, or if that should be referred to a committee, a parliamentary subcommittee, which will again hold discussions, look at all the suggestions that have come in, etc. What is peculiarly different about this government is that because it has bulldozed so many legislations in the parliament with no due consideration for process, whether it is the process of debate, whether it is the process of allowing these bills to be referred to a parliamentary committee for further discussions, all of these things. So, given the history of how several legislations have been bulldozed through, is why the opposition, stakeholders, including the citizens, have concerns about this particular bill. So yes, all governments tend to assert themselves, but given the history of the incumbent government, the BJP-led NDA government, that fear is far more profound, and it is not unfounded.
Also, how might this specifically impact smaller independent broadcasters? Uh, for a while, let's not talk about the media specifically, in general, broadcasters, because larger media houses, larger content creators have access to certain things. They have lawyers, but most likely an independent person or just someone creating content for fun might not, especially stand up comics. And because nowadays we see people just giving a social commentary, and this bill has a problem with social commentary. Also, there are a lot of repercussions that they can have. How might it affect, if you could just give us a scenario, how it's going to affect a common citizen who's just doing some their normal
See,
content?
like I said, because the government has chosen not to put this bill in the public domain, I'm only going to go by what has been reported and whatever little bits and pieces of information we have about these proposed bills. The first things first. What is the big amendment that this bill is proposing to make? It wants to classify different kinds of content creators as digital news broadcasters, YouTubers, content creators, and social media influencers, especially those making commentary on current affairs and news. Now, the point is, as a digital content creator, you're always doing something current. It could be in fashion, it could be in sports, it could be in politics, it could be on music, on anything. So, if you're a content creator, you're essentially doing content about, you're an influencer or a content creator, YouTuber, you're doing content about current affairs. So, it classifies everybody doing content, commentary, analysis, even expressing opinions on current affairs and news as a digital news broadcaster. So that basically takes away the distinction of who a journalist is, who's not a journalist, who is a commentator, a political commentator, who is a subject matter expert, and who isn't. Okay, that is more at a basic level of differentiation. The second component of this amendment is the more problematic amendment. Now, so once you are categorized or classified as a news media broadcaster, you have to set up a content check unit. Even if you're a single person content creator, you are supposed to have this unit that is going to go through the content that you want to create videos, or you want to create podcasts on, and go through it and ensure that it is not problematic. Now, what is problematic? Now, that is the question. What is problematic? I don't know. Opinions are subjective in nature. Now, I can call this bottle red. I can call this bottle green. The fact is that it is green. You can differentiate. If I'm calling this red, then you can say I'm spreading fake news. Now, if I'm just calling this a 1 liter bottle with wine in it, not water in it, or some kind of a solution in it, there's no way of you to assess what it is.
What?
Just to give a very random example, you want single person operations to set up own content check unit. That is an additional cost. You want them, after a certain number of followers, to register with the government as digital news broadcasters. Now, the moment you register with the government, you come under a series of regulations that you have to follow, including the permission to the government to assess that your content is not good enough for the government, or your content is not comfortable for the government. So the moment the government feels that whatever you have said, they don't like it, it
It's
doesn't
something like
it
emergency
doesn't matter.
situations
Yeah,
where papers are not
absolutely.
allowed to print
Yeah, it doesn't
anything.
matter whether you're right or wrong. If the government deems that we don't like what you're saying, in all likelihood, that is what is going to be like. Because how else do you criticize an elected government? It can be different formats. It can be sarcasm. It can be direct analysis, just a plain news analysis. Now, once the government decides that it doesn't like the content you're putting, for whatever reasons it may be, it will issue an order for you to take it down. And other than the order, this particular amendment in the new draft bill, whose copy we do not have, says a police officer can land at your doorstep. They can seize all your equipment that you are using to broadcast your opinion, analysis, or content, whatever, without giving you any reason. So if, say, for example, I'm doing this on my system, and this is a system I used to work, and I can't do anything about an officer coming and just seizing it randomly, saying, you're in violation of a government order. I am not given a reason. I am not given the space to challenge it, anything. So if you ask me, is this acceptable in a country that has fought for its freedom? Absolutely not. Listen, this is what the British used to do to radio,
Yeah.
that were used by freedom fighters to communicate with each other. This is the kind of rules and regulations that were used to shut down anything that the British thought is not good for them. So I don't think after 70 years of fighting for our freedom, we should once again be fighting for what is basic.
Also, there are rules that it's going to affect the advertisements as well as OTT aspect of it. If you could tell us a bit about that as well.
So, like I said, the moment you are classified as a news broadcaster, as a digital news broadcaster, you automatically, or at least under this bill, you come under a set of regulations. One of the regulations also is about commercial business professional benefit out of it. So even there, when in this particular copies of the bill that are doing the rounds, they are insisting that the bill insists that anybody who engages in social media activities, whether it is whether it is creating your own content, putting it up on YouTube, or whether you're posting this content through social media intermediaries, which is your Twitter, your Threads, and Facebook, and all of them. Uh, if they're doing it doing it as part of a organized profession for business or for commercial purposes, then all of them also will have to come under severe regulation. So a lot of people in fact ask, does that mean that somebody who's responding to a Twitter thread, will they also
Yeah,
be?
exactly.
If you are on Twitter and you have a subscription open, which means if you're making money out of Twitter, then yes, you are also considered as a digital news broadcaster under this law. So if you're making money, YouTube monetization, if you're making money, you are seen as a commercial entity. Through Google AdSense, if you're making money, whether it is on your Facebook, your social media pages, or on your personal blog site, anything you're making money, then you become classified as a digital media broadcaster. So the moment the government thinks that, for example, let me just cite a small example. Somebody like, say, a Dhruv Rathi or like a Ravish, given the kind of following that they do have quite a bit of monetization via YouTube. You have a lot of content creators, former journalists or former researchers who run their own YouTube channels where they allow a payment gateway. Basically, if you're watching it and you want to,
Yeah.
transfer money to them, you can do that immediately. No bar, whatever you can do.
Yeah.
So the government can curb that, essentially making it non-viable, not viable for you to continue in content creation that could be critical, sarcastic, questioning, or seeking accountability from the government, which the government can deem um,
It might
Not
not even
okay.
publish, honestly, in that case, right? Firstly, it might not even be allowed to publish because it would be stopped at the level of evaluation itself.
No, but that's the thing. Who's evaluating? Evaluation is a self-appointed
Yeah,
committee. That's what they want you to do. They
hmm,
want you to have a self-appointed committee that will evaluate the content that
that
you
is
have.
the thing.
The possibility is that what are the number of strikes? I do not know. I really do not know. After the set number of strikes, if the government chooses, it can shut down your
Yeah.
page, permanently ensure that um, you no longer have a digital presence. Is that the extent to which you can go to as a government, that you will deny cyber presence of a citizen, a digital presence of a citizen, or impactful digital presence of a person? Um, that's why this is problematic. It doesn't end. It is not just a question of freedom of speech and expression. It's also a question of whether you're shutting down a probable livelihood
Hmm.
of people who are engaged in the field of digital broadcasting.
Also, especially in the last elections, we had seen that digital media had played a huge role. They were the ones who had criticized the government more. And as per the CST report, we have seen that news consumption from digital media was 30%, and that too from youth. So, do you think that because of this, that the new draft, which of course we haven't seen, has much more control as compared to the draft bill that was there in 2023? Is it because of the election results and the, do you think it could be a step for that to see that how this media is impacting and now it needs to curb the voices?
See, there are two sides to this. I think I'm going to get a lot of brickbats for it, but nonetheless, I will say this: we live in a digital era where digital media. When I say, I don't mean digital news sites, but digital medium, whether
Yeah.
your OTT platforms, your access to social media, the kind of information that you get from everything digital,
Hmm.
it needs some sort of process, some sort of regulation. For example, can a child have access to everything on the internet? Right now, we are functioning on a parental guidance
Hmm.
level. And there is no punitive action. For example, child pornography is available on something as open as Twitter.
Yeah.
Do you need regulation for it? Absolutely, yes. Do we need regulation to ensure that access to violent videos is restricted on YouTube for citizens of a particular age group or citizens of a certain abilities? Definitely, yes. Those are the kind of regulations we need. Regulations that ensure the safety, mental, emotional, and physical safety of your citizens. There is no doubt. So, if somebody is going to ask me, do we need at all laws that regulate social media, that regulate digital media? Yes, we do, because as we evolve as human beings, we evolve. Digital space evolves. The kind of engagement we have on digital space does evolve, and laws, if anything, are very late to catch up. Laws, legislations do need to catch up, but the kind of legislations we need are protective legislations, not exploitative legislations. Now that is where the problem lies. You asked me if if elections and the consumption of news
Yeah.
during elections had something to do with it. No, that's why I have to start while saying that mainstream media. Why did so many people in India move away from mainstream media to digital space at independent organize? Not just because we have access to internet. Internet is cheap, of course. Not right now. Too bad for geo users. Not right now, but internet largely is cheap, and you can wherever you're sitting in the country, you have decent access to digital media. Probably the penetration of internet is one reason, but the more important reason is that people found more credible, viable, reliable news
Hmm.
on non-mainstream platforms. And that's where the problem began. But because for the last 10 years, whether it has been a conscious effort by, say, the BJP, which is often accused of controlling the media, or a collaborative effort by mainstream media, which is more than happy to um, accommodate the government of the day. The primary job of the media is to ask questions, but if mainstream media has forgotten to do its job, then somebody else will. Even today, that is going to happen. For example, if the government thinks by any chance with this bill, it is going to uh, impose either fear out of which there is self censorship, or impose rules which will compel people to not engage in critical analysis or logical thinking, then they have something else coming. You can't break the human spirit of curiosity. People will figure out a way to still criticize. People will still figure out a way to still analyze. Yes,
Talk about it.
the most vocal voices may end up facing much more action, but there will always be people who are going to say something that you as a government do not like. There will always be people that you will find to be thorns in your feet. So, if the intention is to somehow bend an entire country into subjugation of some sort, that's not going to work. Or quite honestly, it's not going to work. But should a government do something like this? Definitely not. Governments are there to protect the interests of people, not to take away the sense of freedom, especially in a country like ours. Like I keep insisting, your grandparents, my grandparents have fought for this country's freedom. It's not likely that we'll give up on it too soon.
Also, do you expect that this bill would be passed? Can it be passed? Because at least we know that this time opposition is against it. But will they be able to hold it? Because, like you mentioned, in the past we have seen the government bulldozing the bills without anything. Would it be able to get through this as well? There are
See, there are two beautiful things about any bill in India. The first thing, of course, is the parliamentary check. You will have to debate this bill. Whether or not the government allows it is a different matter. Now that you're pointing out, the opposition is much stronger. Will that compel the government to push for a debate? That is something that we'll have to see. The within the parliament, within the first part of this answer, within the parliament, you have the Rajya Sabha. In Rajya Sabha, also the numbers are quite challenging for the ruling dispensation, which is NDA. But a lot of power lies in the hands of political parties that have not aligned themselves with either the opposition bloc or the incumbent bloc, which means their vote matters. Their vote on bills like this do matter. If the government is going to introduce this, what kind of bill are they? What How are they going to classify this bill and present it in the house? That will also matter. Is it going to be a finance bill? That is something we'll have to see. So parliament apart, we do hope that there is very, very strong debate, very logical rebuttals to the concerns that exist in this particular bill. The other thing is judiciary as the judiciary in this country is empowered to ensure that the basic constitutional right of any citizen is not violated by any legislation. The Supreme Court is well within its powers if it interprets this bill to be in violation of constitutional rights of citizens. The Supreme Court is well within its power to strike it down. But that comes much, much, much later. What we need definitely is larger consensus, much larger consultations with people, and bills that impact the largest section of the country should deserve that participation from people.
So, lastly, coming to the fact that we need regulation in terms of our digital media as well. Like you already mentioned about the age things, but with AI, deepfakes, content creators tend to do, and right now we see that YouTube, Instagram at least has the option that AI generated those things, but it's very limited. Uh, I personally believe there should be certain laws because fake news is also spreading through it. What sort of regulation would help at that point? Like, what could be the solution to those things?
I think first things first, you need to restrict. Um, okay, first things first. Actually, the onus is on the state government or the central government to ensure that problematic content that is explicit in nature, whether it is sexual in nature, whether it is violent in nature, is restricted, has a restricted access to everybody. Children should not be allowed to access it, even if they try looking for it. Um, you know, uh, then comes the component of criminal activity on digital platforms. Right now, yes, all of our police stations have a cybersecurity wing, etc. But there is very little investigation, very little conviction, even lesser conviction when it comes to cyber crimes. Make those laws more stringent, more not just punitive laws, but even preventive laws. Right now, when you look at cybercrime, you will only see that the punishment is enhanced every now and then. For 6 months, you will end up making it to 6 years. But what we need in place is a system, is a technology adept system that prevents prevents different segments of exploitation online: financial, physical, emotional, all sorts of exploitation. We do need much more technology oriented, technology adept regulations in place that prevent misuse of digital space. That is one. Second comes, yes, the punitive measures. How can you make it? How can you make digital space safer for women, for children,
Yeah.
for vulnerable, for senior citizens? People keep forgetting the senior citizens are most vulnerable to cyber crimes, other than children, of course. Then comes the then probably, I mean, I can just make it as a say this as a recommendation. Then probably a component that is consistently looking at the changing nature of digital space and coming up with solutions for problems that arise on a daily basis. Like you pointed out, we live in an era where people are dating on apps.
Yeah.
We live in an era where you don't even need to be physically present in a meeting. Right now, we are connecting digitally. We don't know, we have not met each other in person. We live in an era where uh, people can work from home and it doesn't make any impact on their work. But it is also an era where teenagers are being bullied in their own friends groups for not knowing how to use a particular app.
Yep, yeah.
You
Or
know,
just
for
a
not.
creator.
Yeah, for I mean, you have children being bullied because they don't have a digital avatar.
Yeah.
You know, things like that, the things that you can't even imagine. As an adult, I can't even imagine things like this. At best, I think I got mocked for wearing the wrong sock for a wrong shoe, perhaps. I mean, times have changed, and I think we do need a mechanism that on a everyday basis, given how quickly things change in the digital world, keep tab of the new problems that come in and come up with solutions for it. But the point of all of these three things: preventive law, punitive law, and a consistent check on how things are changing. The core idea or the core thought process behind it should be safeguarding citizens, not exploiting
Hmm.
citizens. Whichever way, even if you deny somebody their right, that is exploiting citizens. So I think the focus should be on what makes people's lives better, not what makes their life feel like a prison all the time. Like imagine I think of something that I want to do a reel on, and the only thing that the government is telling me is, other than dancing for a song, you don't get to do anything.
Yeah.
So
But even the song lyrics has to be really, it can't be anything that, would affect the government or something that they would not like. So even that is a
yeah,
problematic thing
maybe
there.
what next? I think government should start releasing on a weekly basis. You know, like how you have on all of these music apps, top 10 music thing
Yeah,
of the week. I think government also should start releasing top 10 music for which you can dance this week.
everything should
That's
be
the only
regulated.
thing we will not take offense to. Other things, then we will start scrutinizing it. Maybe.
So just to put this in place, firstly, the bill's problematic problems start because it's not in public domain, and in case like if a citizen, this is going to be a lot of paperwork, a lot of subjective things happening in place in case if this gets passed. And we do need regulation, but of course, something that safeguards the citizens' right and not the freedom to speak. Well, we'd love to get the comments about our viewers on this thing and how they look at it. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Akshita. It was fun talking to you.
Likewise. Thank you.